that. There'll be a shuttle just outside the hotel or the lodge check-in that can bring up to about 12 people. We'll figure out other arrangements if anyone needs a ride. Dinner is postponed to accommodate, and that's at 7:30. Okay. If you love what you're hearing here, please share with your friends. They can have an opportunity to see us as well through the live stream. And on that note, we'd also love your feedback, and we have feedback forms at the check-in desk. Raffle tickets are also there, and they're on sale for $5, and there's thousands of dollars of prizes. I put 2 in, and I think I'm probably going to win it. I'm really lucky, but we'll see. Dancing Under the Stars has been amazing, and it will happen again tonight, and that's just outside the fireside lobby. And lastly, please silence your cell phones. I just got busted a second ago. My alarm went off in the back during Geraldine's. Apparently the alarms don't shut off when you silence them. But here's, now for the introduction. Matthew is a multidimensional energy healer and intuitive reader specializing in the clearing, balancing, and removal of negative energetic manifestations from the body. His current mission is to assist with healing the human body and our collective consciousness through activation of the expanding multidimensional intuitive healing abilities that exist within each of us. Please welcome Matthew Aaron Ornian.
Thank you, everyone. Congratulations. You are part of these select few individuals on the Earth plane right now. Those timelines have aligned on such a level that you were able to get here. You were able to get here for this strange talk, and I guess I'll start by saying I have a really unique invisibility skill. It's like an ability that we have, and what I've noticed is that in lots of the events and the public things that I've done over the past few years, only a certain amount of people on the Earth plane are even able to perceive it. So what I learned was that for some of us on the Earth plane, we are in a stage of development, a stage of change, a stage of activation, and new things are becoming available, new frequencies, new abilities, and new real personas, elements of ourselves. And so I have been very blessed to be, very casually overlooked, unseen, stored in the back of many different events that I've done over the past few years. I've done a couple where they actually forgot that I was even there, and they didn't know that I was going to be there. So thank you for being part of the select few people on this planet that are actually able to get here. And so what I have learned about that, though, the really cool thing about the work that I do is that, Spirit seems to bring the right people in, the right individuals that are able to receive a certain type of understanding or frequency or an activation. And today, we're going to be talking a bit about that, how it works, how it happened for me, this sort of interesting shift that's taken place for nearly every single person on this Earth plane. And so, if you have not already seen me here before, my name is Matthew. I am a professional psychic, or what we might call an intuitive reader. I'm also a multidimensional energy healer, and really, I would say in 2020 and 2021, what we're really now doing is teaching people how to actually use and develop their abilities, teaching people what does chi feel like, what does non-physical energy feel like, what is this invisible thing that everyone's talking about, how do we use it, what does it feel like, how do I make it my own, how do I even know when it's real, how do I know when I'm in a strange fantasy inside my head, and also how do I look at everyone else in this world and figure out what's actually going on. Those are really big questions that a lot of people will have in their own mind, in their own bodies as they go through this crazy awakening process. And I guess if there's one thing I ever did right in this life, it was launch into the stage in which I was willing to say, you know what? I think I know a little bit about this, or rather, I think I've done this before. And so here we are once again. We're doing it again in this lifetime. And today, and also over the next 3 years, we're doing a bit of a briefing process to help you guys get up to speed in what's really going on with your energy bodies. And so, like I was trying to say a few moments ago, if you've seen me before, you'll know that I'll just kind of rant and ramble on over and over again and probably say things in a very circular manner. So that's why I bring these slides. And I know they're very dim on our screen here today. In fact, you might not even be able to see what's really on the screen, so I'm going to read it for you. And I kind of just said it, but honestly, you guys, congratulations. Those of you guys that are in this room, and also for those of you guys on YouTube, we are live on YouTube at the School of Multidimensional Intuition. Thank you for those of you guys on YouTube out there. But if you've made it here, congratulations. This is really, literally the greatest stage of our life on earth. No matter where you are right now, no matter what walk of life you're in, no matter what your occupation is, this is it. We are in the #1, this is like veteran level in, you know, like the video game. We are in the highest stage of difficulty. And so I want to start out by saying everyone chose to be here. We chose to be born. That's always a fun one to disseminate when I do these, because you get a lot of people online and they're like, I didn't choose this realm. I didn't choose Earth. Get me out of here. You know what I mean? The reality is we all chose to come here. It's something that we figure out as we leave this place usually, and that's when we start going, I can't wait to come back. And so for everyone here that's like, this is my last incarnation on Earth. I'm never doing this again. I can't believe. Incarnate on Earth, right? Incarnate on Earth, they said. You know, guess what? We'll be back. Anyway, you get a different vibratory version of it, but so anyway, our mission here today is to generate awareness of the multidimensional intuitive healing abilities inherent within each and every person here, and to assist in the ongoing evolution of who and what we all chose to become before we came into these weird human bodies. I've said this many times. To me, it's a little bit like a platitude at this stage, because you know, you'll say something so many times, you know it's real, but everyone needs to hear it. Inside each and every person in this room is the soul of a shaman, a healer, an intuitive, a mystic, a great teacher, a magician, whatever you want to call it. By the time we get here on Earth, you've been all of those things. Yes, the good ones. Yes, the bad ones. We've been the victims and the victimizers, and now we are here to understand, why do we do this? What's really going on? It's not to say we ever get an answer, because you guys have probably already figured out there's no real answers here, but our mission today is to help awaken this version of you, once again, during this life cycle, to prepare for the work that every single person in here chose to do during your journey on Earth. Another thing I always say is, and I'm very, very real about this, I'm a brutal realist with the work that I do. There's 1 million people on the Earth plane right now teaching in, you know, intuitive development. There's a lot of people that can help you open up your chi and figure out how to use your channels. And so one of the things that I've learned over the past few years is that some of the things that I may say here will totally not make sense. They may utterly contrast with your already predetermined view of, you know, ascension mechanics or multidimensional energy. That's because we are all figuring this out at the same time as humans. That all of the great masters, you know, everyone loves to talk about it, they are all present on Earth. And if you want to get technical, they always have been. We always come back. And so, at this stage of our collective development, though, we are only beginning to scratch the surface of our understanding of what we call, you know, negative energetic manifestations, things like implants, entities, you know, the wild kind of sci-fi movie version of, you know, all this stuff. And, you know, we're just barely beginning to scratch the surface of everything. We're learning this together. So if there's anything you take from this presentation, let it be an understanding that you are a multidimensional being. You chose to incarnate during this life cycle here on Earth. We came here with a purpose. If there was one thing I ever did in this life, you know, there's lots of things that I did, but if there's one thing that I knew that worked out, that really kind of guided my journey forward, is that there was a period for me in 2017 or 2016 and 17 where I started to hear those voices. I mean, really, I had one of those crazy awakening journeys where, you know, people started talking to me in my head. I'll get into it a little bit more in a minute here. And they started telling me this: you have a mission. It's time to remember. It was one of the most intense and difficult and chaotic times in my life, and I was one of those people that listened to that advice from those strange invisible voices in my head, which, you know, you always shouldn't do when you're, you know, let's say you're working in the mental health field. It doesn't always work out too well, but I did, and because I honored those things that I was taught in that internal space, we are now here within this space to explain a few very important things. A lot of you guys already know this, but we are in a thing called fourth density. Within our spiritual community, there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of bloggers, there's a lot of word salads going around, and everyone wants to be a part of this thing called 5D. this new wavelength of human consciousness that already exists. And so one of the things that we're called to do over the coming years is really help people understand the wavelength and spectrum of consciousness that we are in right now. And it's essentially known here on Earth as fourth density. It's the life cycle in which we as physical beings start to come in conscious and also constant contact with non-physical energy. So one of the many reasons why we've all been called to this moment on Earth is because of the very specific events and changes that are taking place right now. All you have to do is pick up your phone, open Facebook, turn on TV, or whatever it is that you're looking at, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. We are in a predetermined chaos stage on planet Earth that was designed to be the greatest catalyst for growth and advancement that we could have ever created in our lives. And so, no matter who you are, what you're doing here, what's happened in your past, who you've been, you made a choice to this. You made a choice to be here in this moment. That's because as starseeds, wanderers, or what we might call those of other than Earth origin, which a lot of us have already heard, this is kind of old news for a lot of us in this community, we each came here with a specific set of missions, what we might call abilities. And there's also a lot of talk about that in our community, about how to unlock things, about how do you activate your third eye, how do you open up your telepathic abilities. And well, the reality is it's different for literally every single person. Every single person has their own protocol, their own method, their own abilities. Some of us are going to be very good at a certain thing. Others are going to do certain things that people on Earth can't even imagine. But regardless, it's up to us to begin to make the changes, the choices. And in addition to the myriad of choices, contracts, and decisions we made prior to entering this realm, we chose skills and abilities that are activating now. In the coming months and years, some of you will be experiencing a shift in your physical life. A lot of you guys are already having it. It's part of the reason why you came to this strange place, out here in the middle of nowhere in Georgia, because you know that there's something else going on. Even if we don't know exactly what it is or why we're supposed to be here, we know. We get called out to places like this. And if you made it this far in your life, it's because you chose this and you're a part of this movement. You are a part of this thing called ascension, which is a very, very fun word that will also change in the coming years. Get ready, we're going to call it something else. About a decade, there'll be a whole new kind of set of colloquialisms and word salads that we're going to try to use to describe the state that we're in right now. And what it really is, to get to the heart of what's happening on Earth, is we are recognizing ourselves once again. We are remembering who we are and why we do this over and over and over again. And so, let's talk a little bit more about, who am I? Who's this guy that's up here telling you all this stuff? And yeah, sometimes I'll do it cynically, sometimes I'll do it sarcastically, sometimes I'll do it very seriously and intensely. If you've seen me on YouTube, we get pretty weird. Honestly, I'm kind of, at this stage, I think I have made somewhat of a professional calling out of this sort of strange multi-dimensional weirdness that we take part in. But who am I and why are we here? Some of you guys already heard this. My name is Matthew Aaron Mornian. This is always the funnest part of every talk that I do because it gets weird and personal and awkward and vulnerable. But my name is Matthew Aaron Mornian, and I'm a multi-dimensional energy healer, like we said in the beginning. My real specialty, what we really do every single day, and some of you guys heard me say this yesterday, but pretty much every day, for better or worse, my literal mission in this world is talking to people over Zoom, literally all over the planet, on nearly every continent, every country. And what we do is open up chakras, we open up meridians, we open up the density in your organs. What do I mean by density, though? What does that even mean? Lots of terms in this strange multi-dimensional community. Density could be anything from physical toxicity to emotions that are stuck in your body to, in some cases, yes, things like implantation or entities or even infestation of certain types of energies that sort of gather in the human body. They create sickness, they create negative emotional states, they create a lot of the things we call mental illness in this world. And so the way that we do this is by using a combination of, what I was doing out there. Some of you guys saw multi-dimensional tarot reading, which is essentially a manner by which we speak with spirit. A lot of stigmas around tarot. There's a lot of, somebody told me this years ago when I started doing psychic work. They said, and this is a little bit of a joke. They're like, tarot is sort of like, the dirty slut of psychic readings. And I was like, what? Really? She's like, yeah, everybody's had it, and not everybody enjoyed it. Or something along those lines, and I was like, oh, like, okay. It was wild because when I started doing this, it was a tool that I picked up, and it was like I held it in my hand and somehow I knew what it was. I did not know how, but I knew what they meant. And so for me, what that showed me was that there are amounts of knowledge, there are things that we've been carrying with us year after year, lifetime after lifetime, and we come to this stage in our life where we create this radical allowance of who and what we really are. And for me, right around 2015 and 16, things like that were changing in my life. There was this explosion happening. A lot of people have heard me talk about this before, but I was working as a mental health worker in addiction medicine in San Diego, California, working at this veterans treatment center. And one day, just at work doing this festival, I decided to get an energy blessing from a woman completely randomly. Honestly, guys, I was bored. I was like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. Now what? And this woman put her hands on my head. My crown chakra opened, and here we are multiple years later. Seriously. That's literally how it went. And so what happened for me was that upon the opening of the energy centers, or one primary energy center in my body, I experienced what we call a walk-in, or a soul-braiding event. And that is when another version of your consciousness enters the body, which is always a really, really fun thing to talk about in our community, because there's so much disinfo and so much misunderstanding about how that process begins. But I was really one of those people who had that organic switch just flicked inside my life, and something changed. And so fast forward a few years later, a bunch of extraterrestrial contacts, and I will mention a couple of those because we are at Camp Disclosure, and I think it's very important for people to understand that the nature of how we really encounter extraterrestrial energy in this life, kind of like how we develop our intuitive abilities, how we come to our own self-realization, our own understandings, it's entirely individual. And what I discovered was that I was having a number of ongoing contacts and downloads and even meetings. All sorts of things had been going on in my life that I was taught were fake, that I was taught were not real. I listened to a lot of the sort of disinfo secret space program stuff that was going on around in our spiritual community in 2015 and 16, and what I sort of began to understand was that I was having a very different experience than a lot of other people. And I was taught that a lot of what was happening for me was not real. And yet, the crazy thing is that I took the advice of those not real encounters and those not real beings, and in the time since, my life has changed. I've watched other people's lives change. I've watched people recover from things that you cannot even imagine, physical illnesses, people that were on death's door. And by really working through the emotions in the body, by tuning in with spirit, by learning how to tap into this non-physical energy, we've figured out a method of creating dramatic change within the human mind-body-spirit complex. And so it's a very long, convoluted, just a wild story to go through right now. But fast forward to 2018, and my wife and I, Nora, she's sitting in the back over there, we essentially started this thing called the School of Multidimensional Intuition. By that time, I had been working as an intuitive, a professional intuitive. Forget this, guys, get ready. 1 whole year. 1 whole year later, and suddenly we're creating an educational program designed to assist people in opening up those abilities in their body. And so in 2018, I began that program called the School of Multidimensional Intuition. And in the years since, we have expanded on a global level, reaching people literally all over the world. Together, my wife and Nora and I are now on a full-time mission to train and prepare the next generation of healers, mystics, intuitives, and shaman, all the people that are sort of awakening into this new version of themselves. It is not something that I chose. It was not something that at the age of 12 I was like, you know what, one of these days when I turn 40, my entire life's going to fall apart, and I guess I'm just going to become a professional psychic. That's it. Nothing else works, you know what I mean? And I never saw that coming, but what we have noticed is that in the years since, as we have fully embodied these practices and as we've begun to carry them forward, people are showing up from all over the world. And what it's taught me is that we are doing something real. And so it has been a very long journey for me through many incarnations, timelines, traumas. Like a lot of you guys, I got to have a lot of really fun experiences in this life. We got to experience the abuses, the addictions, the insanity. And I honestly, I'll just say it publicly, I got to go through a lot of self-designed bullshit that I created for myself, by myself, that I got to feel through in this life cycle. And I find that is the case for a lot of the real spiritual teachers or the intuitives, the practitioners in this world. It is not a thing that we wake up, at age 5 and go, that's it. I'm gonna do this, I can imagine Johnny was not like, I think, by this age I'm gonna be teaching sexual kung fu. It's not a thing that we woke up and were like, that's what I'm doing. But we find that at this stage of full embodiment in our life, you will find that that's the only thing you can do. And that's when Spirit says, that's your mission. That's what you're called to do. And so for me, it has been this path of full embodiment. How do we do that though? How do we help people figure out what it is that's going on in your body? How do we help people learn how to open their chakras? How do we help them learn how to open your meridians, or even feel the energy in them and know that that's something that's there? Because like I said yesterday, for some of you guys that were here, for this Qigong thing that we did, there's really no system in our world right now. There is no process. There is no real school. There are very few programs designed to actually foster and help people grow in those ways. And so I will be talking more about that. I kind of mixed up the slides here. So we're going to be talking about ETs now, but there really is no system. And so what we were called to do over the past few years is really put that together. And it has been the most effective, the most successful thing I've ever done in my life. And it's one of the things that I choose to talk about each and every time I do a live stream, or every single time I will show up in a place publicly, because I know in every single talk, there's someone out here, whether it's 5 people or it's 100, one of you guys in here, your heart is burning, you know you're supposed to be up here. Whether it's you on the live stream or somebody on YouTube, you know it. You know you're supposed to be, and that's who this is for. Because there's people out there with incredible abilities, and our world has never acknowledged them. And the reality is they may never, they might not. So it's kind of the reason why we're doing what we're doing right now, because I am not the be-all, end-all of this. My friend Eric out there does a tremendous amount of work. He is not as well. There's so many people in our community that are unseen and ready to rise up and activate in truly shocking ways. And so whether you're one of those people on YouTube, whether you're here in the room or on the live stream, this is literally why we do this. This world needs you now more than it ever has before. And so, that said, let's make a strange non sequitur. Here we go. Here comes a strange non sequitur. I'm going to talk a little bit about ET energies. Because like I said earlier, my extraterrestrial contact experiences, honestly, they were nothing like what we heard on Cosmic Disclosure. I had a very, very different experience. And for me, it was, no one ever came and picked me up in a ship. The Anshar bus didn't pull up outside my house and we rolled off to the LOC. Nothing like that at all. For me, it has been a series of out-of-body experiences that I've had over the past few years that I never asked for, that I never looked for. That in one case I never knew what was ever going to happen. I talked about it yesterday a little bit in the Qigong thing that we did, but I think it really bears mentioning, because I know for a fact there are many people on the earth plane encountering these beings right now. So over here I guess it's on your guys' left, very, very tall, dark-skinned shamanic beings. I do not know from where they came from, but I will tell the story again. In December of 2017, I was working at a psychic shop in the greater Los Angeles area that will forever remain nameless. I won't even say the name of the place, it's that bad. Seriously, it is literally that bad. You probably do. You probably does. But there was this one day, you guys, and I decided to do a meditation on lunch. And I just sat down in a little chair, kind of like one of these here, and I was like, I'm just going to meditate here at work. And within about maybe a fraction of a second of me closing my eyes, I was in another place. I was outside. I could see the dirt underneath my feet. It was very kind of reddish, sometimes people would say, I imagine that kind of like Mars, because in sort of hindsight, I look back and I was like, whoa, the ground was red, maybe it was Mars, and who knows what it was, but I basically I closed my eyes and opened them in another place. I was standing in an outdoor area. It was very rural. It was very dusty. There was very red earth underneath me. In front of me were, I believe, 3 men, very tall, very much like this. You'll see on the screen here, very dark skin, very muscular. They were doing this sort of dance. I always say this, but I could probably mimic and do the dance, but a very specific type of movement. They were stamping their feet on the ground and doing this thing. And I just stood there looking at them, and they came closer to me, and as they walked up to me, they kind of got down on their hands and knees, and they put their hands and they stacked them up and made a wall all the way in front of me and all the way over me. It was like they sort of, did it like this with their hands all the way over it, all the way in the back. And as they came around, they came back up to me and blew some sort of dust into my face. And a lot of you guys heard this story yesterday, but in that moment, I was immediately taken to another place, a dwelling place, and I observed myself go through a healing process on what I believe to be an extraterrestrial child or one of these beings in this place. Immediately after that, or during that process, I actually heard a sound. I'm kind of skipping through a lot of the story because most people here have heard it by now, but I heard this sound during that experience. It was like a ringing. It was this tone that came out. Didn't even occur to me at the time, but after that process, a lot of other things happened. I may talk about it later. But a couple weeks later, I started making the sound in my healing sessions. It was just like this tone, and I decided, I realized that when I did it, things really changed for people. Some people would cry, some of them would shake. Like I said yesterday, I actually had an experience in one case where we opened up the crown chakra of a woman, and she became something like a lion or a tiger or some sort of an animal. It was a very, very interesting experience. What it taught me was that, even within the bizarreness of it all, was that the human body has the ability, when properly aligned or activated, to create a different wavelength, a different frequency. And in this case, it was the power of sound. What I began to discover, shortly after that, was that you don't even actually have to physically make the sound. But when we do, it allows the human body to transmit just a very enhanced frequency of multidimensional energy. Something that I picked up from these beings here. And I have to be real though, you guys, it was not taught to me. There was not some wise guy that came in and was like, you must do it. Nobody said that. It was really me mimicking what I experienced. It was like I saw this thing, I heard it, I copied it, and here we are back on Earth 5 years later, and now we're teaching that to people from all over the world. Not only are we teaching that to people, the ones that we teach it to are now able to elicit, create, and generate the same responses within the human body. So what it taught me was that there was literally something real. It took a little bit of a deeper turn. And a few months after that, when I started putting together certain classes that I was doing, I began to have a couple other experiences which came about in very, very strange ways with what I believed to be these strange beings. And they started to give me words. They started to give me phrases. And what I called them later on was capsule phrases. And what I was shown was that the capsule phrase was very much like a mantra, but what it was essentially a container of energy uttered by the human voice that allows you to place within it a number of frequencies, very much like a capsule. You'll take a little pill, it'll have a bunch of stuff in it, vitamins, pharmaceuticals, whatever, but it was the 4th density version of that could actually be transmitted very effectively through the human voice. And believe it or not, it goes literally anywhere in the world beyond space or time, which is always a really fun one to try to explain. But what I was given over the following year after that was a number of capsule phrases, utterances that we now teach and use in our energy clearings. One of those we used yesterday in our Qigong talk, and I will give you guys another one right now that you guys can use to assist yourself in grounding your energy, to open your root chakra and also your earth star chakra. Why would you want to open and balance those? So you feel more anchored in reality, so you feel more present in the physical world, so you feel grounded and just in hold and in charge of your energy. You're able to be amongst people and not be swayed by others' emotions. You're able to have solidity. You're able to be alone within a group of people and still be utterly present. When the Earth Star chakra underneath the body is aligned and sort of anchored into this physical world, also non-physical world, we are just more present. And so I'm going to give it to you guys here. I can also write it down for you later. You can check us out on YouTube, but you can use this in your meditations. And I'd like you to just kind of allow yourself to receive this vibration. For some of you guys, it'll be like, what? Well, for others, you'll feel it in your own way. And so let's just kind of close our eyes for a few quick moments. And what we'll do is I'll count from 3 to 1. You'll take a deep breath in, and as you let it out, just receive this vibration. So let's take that breath in and let it out. And 3, 2, 1. We got a couple rusty Earth Star chakras in the room. You'll feel a little bit of debris hanging on the end of that. We'll do it one more time and notice how your body feels. Don't worry if it's the first time and you're like, what are we doing? How does this work? This is your Earth Star chakra. But where is it? How will you know it's even working? Oh, it's right down there underneath your feet. I don't know, maybe about 3 to 6 inches, sometimes farther. So let's do that one more time. Take a deep breath in. Thank you. Maruva. So you guys can use that in your meditations if you choose. Why does that work? Why does that actually work? That's the literal vibration of your non-physical body. And so by using capsule phrases, very, very similar to mantras. In fact, if you want to get technical, they're kind of the same thing. But by using Maruva and a set of other phrases that we've been given, it allows you to place a bit of energy inside a container. The container being the utterance of the phrase, the energy being your choice. What do you want to put in there? I have to be real. You can put anything in it. Seriously, it could also be a negative thought form. We have to be real when we understand that nearly all of the multidimensional non-physical energy in our world is absolutely multipolar. It can go in any direction, and it's really all about our intention. And so we were given a number of phrases which we use actively to kind of harmonize and open the body. Tomorrow we're going to be using, I think, all of them. We're going to be doing a group healing tomorrow as well, so you guys can check that out. But moving on, let's get over to this guy over here. Strange Lyrian beings, these white lions, and I believe it's important to mention the Lyrian aspect, because these are beings that a lot of people within our spiritual community talk about, these very large feline lion beings. And I was blessed to have direct experiences with what I believe to, whether you want to call it Lyrian or, Syrian or, whatever Earth-created extraterrestrial name that you want to tack onto it. In 2016, before I kind of launched into what I was doing right now, I began to have, similar to these guys over here on the left, some of the most incredible and vivid, not only visions, but straight up telepathic conferences with these beings right here. I was at a stage in my life after that activation that I had in 2015 where, honestly, you guys, for about a year straight, the only thing I could do was go to work, go home, stand in this little spot in my backyard and do Qigong. It was the literal only thing I could do. I was going that crazy, and it was the only thing that really helped me get a hold of what was going on in my body. And for a whole year straight, it was like I kind of wore out a little area in our backyard at that time. It was like this little place where I would be every day. It caused all kinds of problems in my life, Try doing that, watch how your marriage falls apart and everything else in your life crumbles, because it definitely did. But there was one day in particular that I will always mention, because it was a turning point for me in this life, and it was coming right around the stage when I knew this was real. Too many things had happened, too many beings, too many dreams. I would wake up in the morning or in the night and I would watch and feel my body coming out of the ceiling, you know, going through some weird shimmery blue portal. And you know, honestly, as a mental health worker at that time, it's like, who do you tell? Who do you tell? Who do you tell? And like I said earlier, we were in a really interesting stage in our multidimensional, you know, like community where, you know, really the only way that the people around me would sort of accept that it was real is, you know, if I was like, it's secret space program, and then suddenly everyone, you know, everyone would listen. But for me, it had nothing to do with any of that stuff. And these were experiences that I did not have any control over, that I was watching, that I was going through. And honestly, at the time, I was really kind of just wanted things to go back to the way they were. Really, at that stage, it's like I was unable to do anything else but stand in my backyard and do Qigong. And there was one day in particular when I was literally standing back there and I noticed my body would start to shake after a while when I would do this. Some people that do it, you know, you'll notice your body will tremble and sort of move, and I was like glitching out in my backyard. And I looked up in the sky and I saw this cloud, and it was literally this guy. And I don't mean like one of those things where you're like, it looks just like a line. It was like, it's undoubtable. In that moment, I looked ahead of me, and you know, this is a telepathic thing. I've told this story many times, but a lot of people are like, really, they were there? And I have to say, this was a non-physical experience, but in that moment, I looked ahead of me. There was one of these guys standing in front of me. To my right, I believe there was a very tall humanoid, which we might even call like a Pleiadian or a Nordic being. I know to my left, there was what I believe to be a mantis being, and then I think on the outer corners, there were like these lights, these sort of light beings. It was like this whole hierarchy, this whole group of something showed up, and I was standing in my backyard. This was like summer of 2015. I was literally overcome with emotion. I'm shaking, I'm crying. I was down on my knees in my backyard, literally like, you know, down here crying. And they were like, Matthew, you have a mission. It is time to remember. In that moment, I saw everything. It was like I saw me leaving my house. I saw me transitioning. I saw this whole other stage of my life, and I did not know what it was. I had no basis for comparison, but I knew that something was about to change. And you know, there I was on my knees in the backyard, literally tears pouring down my face. And my wife at the time comes outside, and she's just looking at me, and she's like, so what do you want for dinner? And I'm sitting there, you know, and I'm like, and honestly, in that moment, I was like, I'm done. It's time to go. I knew at that moment that who I was becoming was no longer acceptable to those who knew the old me. And it wasn't as if I was suffering. I have to be real. I was not suffering. I was not in this crisis stage of my life, but these guys showed up. They helped me remember who I was. So here we are several years later. Fast forward, many other beings showed up along the way. And here's something that I rarely mention this, but we have a really fun group and it feels very safe. I have never encountered a gray alien. I have not. I have been one of those people who has, you know, I've had tons of experience with all kinds of beings. For some reason, these guys never showed up. So I always kind of make a little bit of joke about these guys. I just do not, I'm not one of those people. The grays don't show up in my world, or maybe they do and they mind wipe you instantly. So maybe they're always here. Like, yeah. But these guys never showed up for me. And the other thing I want to mention, hopefully you guys can see this character over here. These strange reptilian beings that a lot of people in our community, and you know, rightfully so, our planet has actually had some very difficult experiences with reptilians over our, you know, wide-ranging physical history. And I have to be real, I am one of those people who, I honestly, I will say it, I think I know now I'm very, very heavily linked with what we call the energy of Orion, the Orion Council, the Orion Nebula, just the energy that comes from Orion. And what I have been shown is that there are many, and I've also experienced them, there are a vast hierarchy of positive reptilian and dragon-like beings. Some people call them saurians. There's a number of different names for them. They're absolutely 100% real. And I was blessed to have very, very positive experiences with them. And I think that I have been authorized to say beyond a shadow of a doubt that I have had physical contact with a reptilian being. I've touched its face. I know that they are real. I know that they are real. And I also know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was an incredibly positive experience. It was one of the most expansive and full of love that I've ever had. And it was also a very shocking experience because what I was shown about these beings is that their natural culture, their ways of life are very, very different than what we experience here on Earth. And the specific experience that I had with these reptilian beings, I was actually with my wife at the time, and we were kind of just in a meditation on our bed at home, and it was very much as if our entire, or for me, what I experienced was that our entire home was kind of frozen. I was unable to move, and it was as if these beings came in our home and sort of, they'll kind of pick you up and examine you. You know how we'll pull an animal out of the ocean and we're like, oh, look, we got a real good one here. It's like you'll sort of like, oh, look at this guy. He's got a huge this or that. Look at their hair. All right. And they kind of put, and they sort of dropped us back in. And within that state, though, I was face to face with what looked very much kind of like this guy right here. It's probably going to be hard to see on the screen, but much more like a dinosaur. I would say shades of brown and sort of just what we would call earth tones. It sounds so cheesy. And in that moment, when I saw the face of this being, I asked, and this is a thing that, a lot of you guys have had out-of-body experiences, you'll realize at a certain point, the human mind, your consciousness kicks in as all. Honestly, it's like, what the hell? Like, what's actually, the mind kicks in. And I began to ask, are you real? Is this even real? Is this actually happening? And he said, touch my face, tell me if I'm real. And to be honest with you, I actually didn't. But I observed myself touch his face, and I saw my left hand go out. I touched him right here on the side of his eye, and every time I talk about it, I can still feel it. Kind of felt like an iguana a little bit, but there's a texture. There's like a texture, and I would even say, this is the hardest thing to describe, there's even like a buzz or a hum or like a current. There's a current that's there as well. It's very difficult to describe in human terminology, but what I was shown at that stage was that they were one of many, many groups of beings that inhabit our astral space. And the really cool thing about it is, honestly, they're probably here right now, like literally in this room. One of the things we're going to discover as we go through this human life cycle is that we are sharing this space with an absolute whole other world of non-physical beings and non-physical energies. And yeah, some of them have very, very different ideas, very, very different ideas about what is right. One of the most bizarre things that I learned from this reptilian encounter was that they had a very, very shocking custom on their planet or culture or realm. And I realize now that they showed it to me with honor. It was like, this is part of our life, and it's gruesome, you guys. But what they do is they take the youngest or weakest member of their family and they cull it. Cull is another word for kill. They ceremonially kill the weakest member of whatever their network is. And the crazy thing is, that was an honor, which is wild. Here on Earth, we're like, really? And for them, that is an honor in their world, as is a number of very brutal sexual practices. We won't even get into them, but things that are commonplace within alien cultures that for those of us that are seeking disclosure, those of us that want to learn about, well, how did this ET thing really work? Well, one of the reasons why that's not happening on such a large level is because humanity is not really ready to understand the manner by which many of these beings live in our world. That does not make anything wrong or right, because to them that is a utterly and completely normal aspect of their existence. And so there's a lot of changes and conditions that we have to take place. Likewise, and not that it's related to this sort of Pleiadian-esque picture out there, but there are also a number of other beings that, inevitably we are having contact with and we will have contact with. Some of them do appear a bit like that. And honestly, you guys, just them having contact with you, this is always a weird one to talk about. Just the act of contact, you coming in the same space with them, it is so intimate that it is very much like you have sex. But you don't. You have this encounter where you become so closely enmeshed on a psychic, intuitive, and energetic level that it's so far in there that our human bodies are like, we don't even know what to make of it. And it is literally real. And so that's going to be a really fun thing for people to unpack as we go through this sort of internalized and externalized disclosure process, is that a lot of these beings connect in certain ways. They have customs, they have mannerisms, they have this way of life that to us on Earth will be utterly confusing. It's very hard to understand. And we, within our sort of, distorted third to fourth density states, are still really caught up in trying to understand how that works and what it means. And so, I think for those of you guys out there, though that does not mean that, some alien's going to come in your dreams and look at you and have sex with you. That's not really how it is. But what it tells us is that we are due for a number of experiences as humans, that we will need to really come to different levels of acceptance and understanding and self-knowledge about, especially when the very fearful and frightening things will be shown to us, because they will. I had another experience with a reptilian being after a channeling that sort of came into my space, and I received a healing from this being that, if you want to get technical, it's part of the reason why it's so easy for me to speak publicly now. But I had an experience and a healing in which another reptilian energy came toward me. It was much more like a crocodile-looking being. And he said to me, there's energy in your throat. You can give it to me, or I will rip it out of you. And I was like, hey, of course you can. There's no question. It's like, okay. And it was very, very blissful. There was nothing bad about it, but it was one of those experiences where it's like, and you realize in the end it was something that greatly, greatly aided me. But I think for a lot of us, having those encounters without any pre-existing context, or having those encounters and honestly listening to the vast amount of disinformation bullshit that is disseminated in our multidimensional community, the incredible word salad, ascension lingo that everyone's throwing around, we will come to find out that the real nature of those experiences is incredibly different. And I think you're going to find that a lot of the people that are sort of continuing to push these sort of division timelines about how this is how extraterrestrial contact occurs, I think we're going to find out in the coming years that a lot of those people are going to phase themselves out of our community. They're going to sort of dry up as everyone else starts to experience the real version of it. So the reason why I say that is because I know for a fact, I can see it and feel it. Many of you guys here are already in states of contact. You are already working with your extraterrestrial soul families. But kind of like with psychic abilities and intuitive development, there is very, very few people on the earth plane that are able to actually open up energy centers and look at things from an objective point of view that will help people understand what's really going on. Now, that does not mean that people like myself or you or whoever else we go to are going to be the be-all, end-alls of that information. But what it tells us is that this is a thing that is happening, and everyone's going to figure it out in their own way. Let me take a drink here before I go on a weird circular rant, which I will do. For those of you guys that know me, watch out. I'll say the same thing 4 times in a row. And so let's get to some of the more kind of actionable intel that we can work with. So a lot of people right now, whether you're here to kind of figure out how do I unpack these ET experiences this man says I'm having, or how do I even start this stage of my life, or maybe you're asking yourself, well, how do we start to open up those intuitive abilities? How do we actually turn on this telepathic thing, which I will say, and we'll talk about telepathy a little bit more in a few moments, you're already having it. And if you're questioning, do I have telepathic abilities? You already do. It's a natural state in your body. Myself and many others are in constant contact. It will get very overwhelming at times. But it's a thing that you really need to start looking in the mirror and looking at yourself and going, yeah, I do have this, even if you don't feel it yet. There's one thing I can guarantee you, and I'd love for somebody to write this down and come find me in 50, 60 years, but by the time most of our physical lives here are done on Earth in this life cycle, the majority of you will already be in constant conscious contact on a telepathic level. You signed up for a lifetime in which you get to unpack this. Doesn't mean that you will. It's a personal choice. Not everyone will. Some people will have a very hard time. Some people already have it. But how? What do we need to do? What channels, avenues, areas of the human body do we need to work with so that we can actually open this stuff up? Well, here we go. These are not the only ones. People out here that know, there's always a few people at my presentations and they're like, you forgot this, you forgot that. Clearly, you forgot the Nadio complex. You know what I mean? There's always something that we get left out, but these are the, I always get kind of cheesy. To me, these are like, you know, characters in a video game, you know what I mean? Or it's kind of like Voltron in the 90s, if anybody remembers that. And they all form together into one super being, but really what it is just the layout of what, I believe in my work and also the work that my wife does, the most important areas for us right now to really start working with and understanding. And you can kind of see this on the side over here. It's a stylized chakra image that I created for our chakra class, but for those of you guys that are starting to hear about the chakras, this is one of the most important things for you to understand, as is the vagus nerve. In fact, these two characters in the middle, the lymphatic and the vagus nerve, you know, honestly, if there's two places you want to start reading about today, I'd probably start with those guys. Why? Why would you start with the vagus nerve? Well, a lot of people have heard about your vagus nerve. It's the 10th pair of cranial nerves in your body. It's kind of like this fiber optic highway of intuitive, physical, non-physical brainwave info. It literally links every single organ in your body, and it's constantly sending signals throughout your entire system 24 hours a day. For those of us that are unpacking our intuitive abilities, this is the highway. It's not the only one, but it's the main one. It's the biggest freeway in your body for that information. And a lot of us right now are walking around on the earth plane, especially those that have received the really fun round of ceremonial injections. You're coming to the stage in which that vagus nerve, what we call the tone, vagal tone, is going to be gradually weakened over a multi-decade period. And what happens when your vagus tone gets weakened, it's really hard for you to recover from illness. It's hard for you to bounce back from strong emotions. It's hard for your body to understand and mitigate and take steps to reverse damage, or it even stops your organs from communicating with each other. It stops your brain from getting accurate signals as to what's going on. And for those with a really bogged down vagal tone, you're going to have a really hard time in life. You will be very much a victim of environment. You'll be a victim of energy, and it can create a really, really muddy environment. Similarly to the lymphatic system, which has been a literal game changer in my life. I would say in about 5 or 6 years ago, I weighed well over 200 pounds. I was in an entirely different physical body. That is no joke. And I think really by working with the lymphatic system and by learning how to circulate and move and open up what is essentially your body's sewage treatment facility, you will start to generate a level of clarity within the mind-body-spirit complex that for a lot of people, this is the opening gateway into opening up your intuitive abilities. And you can think of it kind of like an aquarium in your body, very much. And if the aquarium is really dirty, you can't see through it, sure, the fish will still be living, right? They'll just, they'll hang out in there. But you don't really see what's happening, and stuff will be growing in there, and there's going to be all kinds of stuff going on in that cloudy environment that will utterly bog down everything else. And so kind of the reason why I put these two characters in the middle is because they're sort of a starting point for a lot of us when we start to unpack our intuitive abilities, and they're really easy to treat. Like, they're probably some of the most easiest places to begin to change and alter on your body, and they're also 100% physical. Sure, you cut open there, do a autopsy on a body here, yeah, you'll find a vagus nerve, right? I mean, if you know where to look, yes, you'll find the lymph nodes. You'll even find, this is a fun one to look up later on, you guys, I'm going to point to it. Right here, in the middle of your body, you'll even find this thing called this cisterna chyli. It's this, actually, I think it's the largest lymph node, but my goodness, it is one of the places where your chakra body links with your physical body. And so, anyway, it's a really, really good place to start to work with. You can create clarity in your body. You can open up all kinds of things. But for me, an opening of the lymphatic system allowed me to perceive things in a different way. It allows you to see things differently, feel things differently. And yeah, it's a thing you're going to continue to do. You will continue to work with it. But it's really the key to generating the first layers of clarity in the body. And so, after the lymphatic system, as you know, you will definitely find lymph nodes in the body, but here's what you won't find. You're not going to find a heart chakra. You're not going to find a throat chakra. You're you're not going to cut open somebody's body and go, whoa, what are all these strange lines? Is that the triple armor? What? Is that, is that the spleen? A meridian? What's it doing all the way down there at his toe? I thought the spleen was up here. And so anyway, all that aside, what it basically is first we start to work with the physical shell, and then we begin to develop an understanding of the non-physical anatomy. And so for me, as a person who teaches this, as a person who, for better or worse, it's always funny to say this, who lives this as well, because I have found I'm incapable of doing anything else at this stage of my life. Really the avenue toward understanding and working with non-physical energy, yes, it's physical, but it begins also with the meridians, with the chakras. A lot of people have already heard about the chakras. The reality is, you guys, there is an untold, unknown number of chakras in the body. Depending on what, cultural ideology you follow when it comes to energy medicine, some people say there's like 72,000. Other people are like, there's only 7 chakras. I think one of the Native American outlooks is that there's 2, that's it. So it really depends on what lens you're viewing it through. But the chakras, for a lot of us, one of the best ways you guys will understand it is and granted a lot of people in here already know, but for those that don't, you can think of them as consciousness gateways, filters, spinning wheels of non-physical energy in your body. I think technically in Sanskrit, chakra means wheel, or I think it actually means turning, if you want to get super technical, but I'm not sure. And so what they are consciousness gateways, very different from the meridians. Other people have been talking about the meridians. The really fun thing is, yes, there are 20 in total. There are 12 primary and 8 what some people call extraordinary meridians. To me, those are the funnest ones. But there are also, here's a really fun thing, which is it's going to take a few years for these to show up or be cataloged by, especially Chinese medicine. For those of you guys who don't know, it'll take them like 10,000 years to acknowledge something. And so they will eventually acknowledge that there are new meridians developing within the body. Some people right now are calling them galactic meridians, which I think is a bit of a misnomer because it doesn't really have anything to do with galactic energy. What it really is an extension of the human non-physical anatomy that's emitting from the human body. And so along with the 20 meridians, I believe there are about 3 or 4 that are tangibly emitting from the human body. And what they're doing is they're causing a different layer of connection with your chakra body, your physical body, and the non-physical body. And so before I go on an even more angular rant, we mentioned yesterday, for those of you guys that were in my Qigong thing, is that one of the most important things you can learn right now is that your physical and non-physical happening, though, it's part of a timed event that was meant to take place within, just the changes of human evolution. And so for those of you guys that want to go further on this, because otherwise I'll continue to rant on it, you can check us out on my website, rememberyourmission.com, and also on the YouTube channel, School of Multidimensional Intuition, where essentially those of us that are, for those of you guys that are in our training programs, this is what we focus on over your journey. Opening these up, clearing them, understanding how to use them. What is it like when your throat chakra's open? What does that mean? What's it like when your heart chakra's blocked? What does the spleen chakra really do? How does it work? Do each of your organs have a chakra? They do. In fact, that's another change that's taking place within the human chakra system. We're developing more meridians that connect us to the non-physical realms, and we are also developing new chakras in our body. And if you want to get technical, they're not actually new. What they are is an evolution of energy centers. And so you have a spleen chakra, you have a liver chakra, you have a heart chakra, you even have a series of what looks like chakra centers within the intestines. But the energy body is changing and expanding on remarkable levels. And so for me, the avenue toward understanding and developing intuitive abilities and helping other people use it and develop it was through working with non-physical anatomy. And so watch out, or I'll keep ranting on that one. Why would we do all that, though? Why would we go through all this trouble and learn about all these non-physical things and go through all this work and self-improvement and deconditioning our emotional body? I know, and if you haven't started, healing that inner child, that pre-age 6 version of us, it's one of the most important things you can do to really help yourself develop intuitive abilities. And so, why are we doing all this? This one will be hard for you guys to read, actually, probably, but it's because we are the explorers of the new frontier. We've entered a stage in our collective Earth experience in which we will begin to fundamentally redefine our understanding of, like we were saying earlier, extraterrestrial contact, what we call the spirit realms, and even the concept of time travel. One of the standard issue natural human abilities activating on the earth plane as we move through this ascension process is the phenomenon of astral travel and out-of-body experiences. And so, don't worry if you don't think you've experienced this or if you haven't had a conscious one. If you've had a really vivid dream, I know some people get a little weird when I say this, but honestly, if you've had a very vivid dream that you're able to remember that feels very much like you were really there, well, it's because you were really there. You know, that's really hard for some of us to still grasp onto, but it's literally true. And so the reality is everyone does this. We already do. Over the coming 3 to 5 years, the majority of people in this room, and I know there's only a few, you guys are going to have a much greater level of this experience. But I will say it's a choice. And yes, you can totally block it. You absolutely can. Human body has a remarkable ability to shut itself down. And so how, let's say you didn't want to shut it down and you're like, I think I'm ready for these experiences. Well, the first thing we really have to do is give ourselves permission. For a lot of, people, myself included, it sounds dumb. We're like, really? I have to give myself permission to have this? For me, it was real. One of the things that helped me was actually creating a contract with Spirit. I would do strange things like write out authorization lists, and I would say things like, I, Matthew Aaron Mournian, currently existing in a human body on the earth plane in the year 2021, do now give full authorization to have the experience of astral travel within this life cycle. And I would even write why. Why did I want to have it happen? Well, for the purpose of expanding my knowledge of my mission, what I'm doing in this life. And I started writing those things down. I would keep it and I would write it down, and I noticed that things would change, things started to shift. And so if you're one of those people and you don't know how to start that, honestly, handwrite a letter to Spirit. For some of you guys, it'll be like, really? Really just want me to write a letter? Yeah, literally, write a letter. Changed my life. You can put it underneath a candle and let it burn out over a 3 to 7 day period, and then just sort of forget about it. Literally, you can even take that thing afterward. What was I doing this for? Get this out of here. Throw it away. And what you will find is that things will change. Sometimes you'll do it a few times, but there's many ways in which we can open these gateways in the body. That's a little bit of an old world magic way. Another way you can do it is to start working with your crown chakra, to start working with your third eye chakra, to start going through a heavy metal detox process, which if you haven't heard about it already, it's probably one of the most important things you can do to generate mental and emotional clarity in your body. It's also going to open up a very important place, which many people regard as being in the back of the head, although there's a number of connections in the back of the head. Some people call it the Bindu chakra, other people call it the moon portal. But what it is basically an opening within the human energy field that in order for us to really accurately and efficiently pass information back and forth, we kind of need to open it up. And so why does it get closed? First off, well, it gets closed by heavy metal toxicity, frequency interference in our physical and non-physical realm. It gets closed by rigid, just thinking patterns, behavior patterns, really dense programs. And so when we start to break that down by opening up our crown chakra, and a number of other places, the Bindu chakra, you will begin to move outside of the body, and you will even begin to find, this is always a fun one, you're going to start knowing things that you were never taught. You will have no way of learning them, but they'll start to show up in your body. Why is that? Why does that take place? When we open up what's known as the Bindu chakra, just so you know, it's right here. In the back of your head, usually opposite your third eye, but you'll find some people regard it as being higher, other people regard it as being lower. You'll also find that chakras change place very, very commonly in the body. They do move, and so there are really no hard and fast rules as to how and where this energy shows up. But upon working with this place in the back of your head, you will start to, once again, bringing it back to our other content, bridge a place in your human body where the chakra body and the physical body and the meridian body all come together. That's with a very important, extraordinary meridian known as your Chong Mai, or also known as the central thrusting vessel. So what does that do in your body? It connects with this thing that some people call heavenly chi. There's a number of words, number of terms that we use, but what it essentially is non-physical energy from your soul family, from your guidance, from the non-physical version of you that exists outside of this body. And upon opening up these channels you begin to experience and receive that energy in a different way. And so the Bindu chakra is going to be a really good one for you guys to work on. Before we go to the next slide, and I'm probably going on way too long, I don't know what my time is here, but I'll give you one more capsule phrase that you can use in your own meditations and processes to help you open up just the energy centers around the sides of the head. We'll do this and then we'll move on. How are we doing on time, by the way? Are we even looking? Do we even know? Okay, cool. Yeah, anyway, yeah. So thanks, everyone. So this is a really cool phrase that you can use for your upper chakras. Just try to receive this, just like we did earlier. We're going to take a deep breath in, and you guys will just receive this as you breathe out. I'll say it real quick, though. It's A, Va, Me. A, Va, Me. So just notice how you feel. Let's take a deep breath in. Notice a little bit different than that Earth star we did earlier. A little bit different. So now we're going to do that again. And if you want to join me on Ava May, you're going to notice the way your head vibrates a little bit differently. Don't worry if you don't notice it. Some of you guys will be like, oh, I don't know, but other people, you'll get it. So it's also going to tell you a little bit about buildup that you might have just in terms of energy in the upper chakras. But it's a really good starting point to teach us where the third eye is at, where the Bindu chakra is at. So let's do it together if you guys want. Take a deep breath in. Chakras. Some of you guys are going to feel a little bit of a vibration there, and so you can continue to use that if you choose, if you want to use it in your meditation. Some people it'll go in one ear and out the other, and that's perfect. It'll stick with you. If it's something of use to you, usually your spirits or guides will bring it in later. So use it if you feel guided. Ava Me. Why would we use that though? Once again, before we move on, it helps us open up the upper chakras and just really clear space for telepathic conferencing, empathic conferencing as well, which is very similar. It's more like sending text messages with your heart chakra, which is a fun thing. And so finally, yeah, I think that was the last one. There it is. Finally.
The last word one? Just the last word, May?
Oh, Ava Me. Yeah. Ava Me. Yeah. So don't worry if it changes. Don't worry if you don't get it right. It's pure intention related. In fact, you can even use Ava Me and you can aim it toward the third eye chakra in the front. You can aim it toward the Bindu chakra in the back. You also have a couple really important energy centers on the sides of your head. A lot of people talk about causal chakras, or it'll probably show up on your phone now that I said it out loud. Or somebody, right? You guys, you'll see it in your own way in the coming months. It is an ongoing activation that is happening for many people on the Earth plane right now. It's probably good to talk about. So I guess we're going to talk about what are the causal chakras. Causal chakras are part of an energetic infrastructure that develops in the human body as we go through a dimensional shift. And so where the causal chakras come from, they emit from the sides of your head. For some people with really, really good clairvoyant abilities, you've even seen this in ancient photos, you remember Ancient Aliens, that show, and they would show these images of these, spiritual leaders, and they had this halo rolling around their head, and they were like, oh, that's, because they were really holy. Also because it's indicative of causal chakra activation. And so the causal chakras are energy centers that emit from the sides of the head during that evolutionary process. For some people, they will appear to emit from the temples. Other people, I think most people, get them from behind, like underneath your jaw and right around the back of your head. And what they do is over time, they extend outside of the body. You have multiple of them. I have been able to find 2, but I feel that there are many others. Just because I think there's 2 doesn't mean anything. But what they do is they move out of the body as we go through the evolutionary process. Why would that happen though? Why would your chakras, you know what I mean? Why would that even take place, everybody? Well, it's part of what we call 4th or 5th density infrastructure, non-physical anatomy that begins to extend outside of the body during this life cycle. So what happens when your causal chakras activate? You start to send and receive non-physical energy, not necessarily between people. That's more of a heart chakra activated thing. It's from a non-physical, kind of like a radio station thing. And people start to receive downloads. Some people will begin channeling on a much greater level. But it's basically infrastructure meant to exist as somewhat of transmitters, receivers. And so what happens over the few years over this life cycle is these causal chakras will begin to move outward from the body. And eventually, they will begin to orbit around the physical body, which, by my understanding, there's going to be many other changes in that, lots of which I probably know nothing about. But eventually, where that leads us is into what appears to be a 3 energy center makeup, which kind of leads into this 4th density energy body, which is where we start to move in and out of physical reality at will. So one of the things during this, kind of long statement that I'm making is by understanding and working with your non-physical anatomy, even if you do not know what it is, how it works, you will begin to develop and understand different layers of consciousness. Your psychic abilities will begin to naturally awaken. Your emotions will change. Your physicality will change. And honestly, just the flow within the mind, body, spirit, human complex, it's going to open up on a level that a lot of you guys right now, you will see other people doing things. You'll even see, I'm just a very small example of that opening. But you can move yourself into states of consciousness and abilities right now that a lot of us are taught to be fake. It's not real. You can't do that. You can't just regenerate the liver in your body. You can't just, cure whatever that, illness is. And watch out, we're on YouTube, so I won't say too much, but, you can't, just grow another blank. Actually, you can. The human body is highly prized by beings all throughout our cosmos because of our ability to regenerate, because of our ability to adapt. And so, honestly, it's the best time you could have ever chosen to be here. It's the best time you could have chosen this physical body. And like I said at the beginning of this presentation, which has been a very long and windy road for those of you guys that know me, it's a great honor. It's a literal greatest honor. There are beings, this is always a fun one to talk about. There are beings that have to audition to come to Earth. Some of us here actually had to go through an auditioning or an initiation process to even get to incarnate on this physical plane. And what's more so, certain beings don't make it. They don't qualify or to incarnate on Earth. And some of those beings actually live with us here in the non-physical realm as our guides and our guardians. They agree not to incarnate in physical bodies. And so I want to give it up to all you guys in the room with each and every person here in the non-physical body. Thank you. Thanks for helping us out. So, wherever you are in that journey, totally, wherever you are in that, thank you for incarnating. Thank you for listening to this strange tirade of multidimensional energy. And wherever you go next in this world, please remember that if you take anything from this process here today, let it be an understanding that you are truly more than this body, you're more than this life, you're more than this flesh. There is true magic inside everybody on Earth at this stage. And it is really, truly up to us to begin to develop it. Like I mentioned at the beginning of my talk, my wife and I have been on a very deliberate practice over the past year of helping people get trained, helping people start to develop their intuitive abilities, helping people start to become professional healers. And honestly, if there was ever anything I did right in this life, it was that. It was that I was willing to make the leap and go, I think I'm supposed to do something else. And it really wasn't because, it wasn't because some bolt of lightning came into my life and, I saw the light and was all, here we go. Honestly, you guys, it was because another person saw me. Another person that does this work. Years ago, this woman looked at me and she was like, that's why you're like that. Oh yeah, it turns out it's because you're a psychic, you're an intuitive, and when you really get a hold of your energy, your life and your world will change. And I didn't really believe it at the time. You know, I was in another body, in another life, in another career, in another marriage, in another world, and honestly, I wasn't suffering, but I knew there was something more. I knew there was a whole other path, and for me, it actually took someone else going, that's why you're like that. And a really crazy thing happened for me. It gave me authorization to be something new, to be something else. And so here we are a few years down the road, and I want to give you guys the authorization to be that, to find that within yourself, to look in the mirror and go, you know what? Maybe all that weirdness and all that unpalatable bizarreness and the awkwardness of my early life and all those bumps and bruises and traumas and question marks, and yeah, even a few triumphs, maybe that was all to set me up for this version of me. So wherever you are in that journey, my true prayer is that all those things that made us awkward as children make us, incredible, empowered, magical, multi-dimensional beings. And so, thank you for being here. Before I go, I want to showcase just a couple things, and I pray a few of you guys here in this audience will take a screenshot of this. You probably won't even be able to get their URLs, but over here on the side of the screen is a collection of people that we've been training over the past year. One of them is here today. He's not in this room right now because he's out doing his own work, but his name's Adam Hull. He's one of the healers here as well. And honestly, if there's anyone that you book a session with here, I would go to Adam Hull. And I think that there's a whole new group of people within our community that are ready to be seen, ready to be heard, and ready to develop and show you guys what they've created. And so, take a look at these people right here on the screen. You guys can take a screenshot afterward, but this is what we are creating. And it's not we, it's not me. It's not, me and my wife are not giving these people modalities and going, here you go, run out there, do your thing. It is nothing like that at all. We're not creating this. We're really opening up a space for people to show up and be a part of a group and a community and go, how does this work? What are my chakras? What are the meridians? How do we use them? What does it feel like? And when we do use them, what do we do? When we do clear it, what do we do after that? And what modalities, what processes, what things can we bring in? And so what we do with these people is we have this monthly group where we connect, we talk about what's going on. People share sessions with each other constantly. That's part of the journey. And really what we do is this right here. An ongoing program. And once again, you're not going to be able to see most of it on the screen. But it is a 6-month or a yearly program in which we take people through this journey. How does it work? What do you do? And I have to be real. It is not for everyone. It is not for everyone. Some people are, they're already far past this. They do not need this type of instruction. But for other people, they know that they have a mission. They know that they have something to create and offer and to become. And we're just a couple of many people on the earth plane doing this thing. And so whether it's from me, yourself, your guides, continue, keep going, keep pushing forward, especially when you come to places like this, or for those of you guys that are putting your name and your face out there, you have a mission, and who knows, maybe you're doing YouTube live streams, or you're advertising your website out there and nobody's looking, nobody's seeing it. Don't worry, continue to embody the most real and authentic version of yourself. And things will change. I am a living example of that. As one of the most cynical and sarcastic people in this strange community, what I noticed was that when I began to fully embody and literally be the realest version of me, which I can be, which is not an easy thing to do, everybody in here knows it, Spirit facilitates change, Spirit facilitates opportunity. There is a whole other version of you, and so thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of this. I've rambled enough, but my name is Matthew. I love you guys. That is it. You can find me on my website, rememberyourmission.com. You can find us on YouTube at the School of Multidimensional Intuition. And we're also on Patreon at the Blue Flame Collective. And so, check us out at the table and hang out for the rest of this We'll be doing a Qigong thing, I think tomorrow. Tomorrow we're doing another process, so see you guys later. Thanks.
No, but I see that, so I can tell you, and get into emotional places I'm not supposed to take them. Of course.
Compared to Gerald being, I'm sure I am.
So good. We have a lot of lessons out here. Oh my goodness. Everywhere we go. It's hot. There, oh. He's gonna get much reading this off, don't worry. Matt, so do you want me to text you?
Yes.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Thanks. Thanks everybody for hanging out.